Okay, we're live. And that's pretty fantastic because it's already 8 minutes after 10 here in Moscow. And I was ready 10 till. Just same thing that happened with the news last time. The streaming software completely crapped out. So I don't know, probably need to update something. But anyway, we're here. Seeing as how technically started a little bit late. Let's just get right into it. There are 11 releases this week. Pretty much everything except for rap. So keep that in mind. And let me just make sure I got everything set up. Yeah. With the streaming, I'm not going to be using Spotify because with the stream setup I have right now, if I go through a VPN, then we're going to have to listen to like a few minutes of German advertising every other album, basically, and just not going to do that. So the links are obviously all to Spotify. I recommend you use that if you have that. But obviously, if you're in Russia, then it's probably not a problem for you to find these things on Yandex Music or Vkontakte or whatever. Anyway, I also realized I had the wrong title on the stream as well, but I fixed that real quick. Anyway, we're just going to get into it. We're actually going to start out with a bit of electronic music here, right at the beginning. And yeah. Anyway, got a few EPs here to kick us off. This is the EP Домашний garage by the artist Dobrovolski. Just really light, breezy house. It's got that summertime vibe, and the vocal tracks that go over the top of this here, kind of goofy, kind of silly, at least if you can understand what they're saying. Not like super, super silly, but enough. I mean, technically, if we're being realistic here, there's a little bit of the garage sound as well, hence the, like, Домашний garage is, like, home-style garage music, but it's really just largely that house sound, or a variation of it. So it's very short, 5 tracks. It's about 10 minutes total, a little over 10 minutes runtime. So none of the tracks stick around for very long. But again, like I said, light, breezy, just not too serious. Just a nice, simple listen. I don't know if Dobrovolski here got a lot of singles, but I don't know if they have. They do have another EP from last year, so. So yeah, really light, really simple, just a type of thing to throw on. I don't know if you don't want to sit around and listen for anything too long, but you're looking for something that's not too heavy. We'll get the heavy stuff later on. That is the EP Домашний garage. The artist there is Dobrovolski, and it's self-released as well. Moving on, we got another EP here. This is the After Image EP by Trofusin. This kind of in fit with the album artwork is that Y2K vaporwave, that type of sound and aesthetics, but it's mixed up with the glitch beats. But it's also got like this kind of ambient, melancholic sound as well. It's an interesting little take here. It's kind of chill, but it also kind of puts you on edge at the same time, which I guess a fair amount of electronic music can do that, but also, I haven't asked, but sound is okay. I can't really turn it up any louder, but I can fiddle. Kind of melancholic, right? You're getting that, right? But jump ahead a little bit. You can hear kind of that glitchy aspect to it. That's what I was talking about too, with that again, that ambient melancholic edge to stuff. But and then this has more of that sort of, again, vaporwave, I don't know, if Y2K aesthetic had a sound, it feels like you could probably label it as such. Jump ahead. So, the other two tracks are a little bit different, not massively so. I mean, they got a little bit slightly more oppressive atmosphere in a way, but in terms of thematics, all four tracks do work together. They all feel coherent as a complete package. So anyway, it's an interesting listen. Again, it's pretty short. It's a little bit longer than the one we just looked at, but not by much. So that is the EP After Image by the artist Trofusin, I think is how we say it. So, and again, yeah, this is, I think, their only real release to it. Who released it? Soak. Okay, Soak. Soak is a label that's got quite a bit of electronic music here too. All right, and then kind of the last electronic thing here. The artist was trying to push this as an album, and LONOWN or LONOWN, I don't know how they pronounce that. I'm calling it an EP. Simply because we got 4 tracks, but then we have the same 4 tracks just slowed down. Now, I will say before we get into this that the last time when we actually did see LONOWN earlier this year, if I can find it, it's not. There was the fake everything, the slowed. Oh, there it is. Why was that not? Okay, yeah. This album earlier in the year with all of the songs slowed, I was absolutely loved it. It had like a really solid Crystal Castles energy. This one, the slowed versions are fine, but I think that they don't, with the exception of the second track, I find the second track personally better slowed down than the original one, because this is, realistically speaking, it's kind of like Witch House, kind of got that Crystal Castles energy, and tracks 1, 3, and 4 on their own are already just solid little bangers in that general sub genre or whatever. It's just the second one kind of feels a little too upbeat with the rest of them around it, so I prefer the slowed version here. It's kind of to each their own, I guess. But I can't in good faith call this an album. This is an EP. Just they the artist was like, what if I actually put all of the remixes to the exact same songs on the same release? It's like, yeah, but they're not even remixes, just slowed, so keep them separate and maybe slow them down a little bit more. Anyway, this is Captivation. This is the name of the EP. This actually isn't so much Witch House, but it's got the it's got a lot of the sort of trademark sounds. Yeah, like that kind of the synth that feels like it's glitching out, or that its levels have been pushed too high. So, I mean, it's a very specific sound. Again, you can imagine, right? These aren't super fast tracks already. So, slowing them down, right? Just to give you an idea. It doesn't, like, actually necessarily I mean, again, maybe if you only heard the slowed versions by themselves, but with the slowed versions last time around, I actually went back and listened to the original versions. Slowed versions were better. This time around, I feel like it's kind of the opposite. So, but I guess, like I said, you have your choice here. Like, this is not a fast track. Slowing it down feels wildly unnecessary. But anyway, yeah. So, I don't know. Again, it's kind of like there are certain sounds that keep popping up again and again in the Russian music scene. It's obviously, well, I mean, like we'll talk about shoegaze a little bit later, but on the whole, that sort of Deftones core, Deftones sound, which I understand is popular in the metal community. Iowa, the album by Slipknot, is one of those that, like, you can easily hear it referenced across, you know, like multiple artists. And then in sort of the electronic end of things, you end up with Crystal Castles a lot, which, you know, hey, I'm fine with all three of those, so I'm gonna highlight that whenever it does pop up. So yeah, ultimately I'm calling it an EP because it's realistically just 4 tracks. You just choose which variation of the tracks you prefer, right? On Spotify, it is just all, it's not split into discs either. So whoever loaded it to Yandex Music too was being really pretty generous with that. But this is the EP Captivation by LONOWN. I don't know. Somehow. Very kind of generic album artwork, so whatever. Non-generic album artwork is this stuff right here, which looks like it comes from one of the Italian horror films from the 1970s. This is ISPOLIN, and the album is Soul Snatcher Possession. I saw everything talking about this using the Doom music label, like Doom as the metal genre, and the group itself uses it, but I feel like it kind of misses the mark, especially when there is very clearly a bong being ripped on the first track. That very bubbly sound is clearly there in the background. Kind of gives it away. This is realistically stoner rock. It's kind of split. It's like stoner rock, but also there is a fair amount of doom. I'll highlight there's a few of the tracks that have like the electric organ, which is one of those things that really only appears in the metal scene and doom music. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and play a little bit here. I gotta double check which tracks. I think we'll start with the opener. So, the group is out of Chelyabinsk. very heavy, very fuzzy. But it's also not too heavy. We're actually going to run into another group like this later on where it's like kind of in the rock metal, but this is like stoner rock. It's not stoner metal. When I think of stoner metal, I think of like High on Fire. And here, musically and vocally, it just never gets like super heavy and aggressive, which is good. Like, you know, you don't need that all the time. There's also cowbell at one point. I think it was cowbell. I'm not sure what else it would have been. Now, this is a debut. The mixing feels like it was not maybe done. Feels like they just did it themselves. So the sound is not always peak. Like, it definitely has room for improvement. But as is often the case, especially with debuts that I've kind of talked about here, there are a lot of times where, like, you can see it's proof of concept, right? Like, this is one of those albums where you can hear there's something here. Also, yeah, I don't know if you can make it out. I think it's here. Maybe it's later on. I don't know. The water pipe is audible on this track in particular. Well, yeah, like, this doesn't strike me as doom music. This is just stoner rock. A little bit heavier than maybe some of the genre, but I've got different headphones in than I normally have been listening with, so that could also play a part into it. I know anyway, I do want to highlight too the like the doom sort of sound. Wait, is this the track I want? I got the third one, but no, let's go with the Russian language one, sorry. So there definitely are tracks here that fit more into the doom end of things, but I think you can hear what I'm talking about with like the mixing. It is kind of a mess. Not really sure if that was intentional or what, but that is what it is. That said, I'm throwing it on here, mainly because I do think, even with the questionable mixing choices at times, there are some kind of fun, like, there's a lot of references to Dune also. Harken in here, Arrakis. There might be some other ones too, but then there's just a lot of references. I don't know. It's kind of a fun album, even though it's kind of a mess. You know how that can happen sometimes. Like one of those, like an Italian horror film. It's not necessarily the best made thing, but you can still have some enjoyable scenes across the whole thing. So if you're looking for something a little like about as underground as you're gonna get, all things considered, a stoner rock doom band out of Chelyabinsk, yeah. Anyway, long story short, if you're into the sort of heavier, sludgier type of stuff, then you know, give it a shot. You might pull a few tracks out of it, but we'll see. Maybe in the future they will get those mixing issues and some of the other things, musically speaking, will just get cleaned up, and we'll get like that release, and who knows, a year from now, 2 years from now, we can come back and be like, yeah, remember that, and look at how far they've come. Or maybe not, I don't know. Anyway, that is the album Soul Snatcher Possession. The group is ISPOLIN or ISPOLIN, and that's it. Now, we're moving on to We got two more metal groups. These don't have any problems with mixing. The first one is hanygaflex, which is not what you might think it sounds like. It's from the Russian word hanyga, which is like a drunk or somebody who's like completely let themselves go or something along those lines. I don't know. I'm sure there's an English equivalent. I'm sure. I'm just like, it's not coming to mind. And this is, so it's hanygaflex, and that is the EP here, УРАН 235, uranium 235. This is evidently something of a reunion for the group, although they didn't really have like a huge back catalog, but regardless, they had been working on other projects. In fact, Mati Mahic, I can't remember. There was an EP I featured, I want to say in like March or April. That was just, it was like a rock EP. He was part of that. And then there was another thing from last year. One of the guitarists was part of that too. They've been kind of doing side stuff or whatever, but came back together. The sound here is something familiar, but kind of unique at the same time. It's got like some new metal, some rapcore, some of that classic metallic hardcore. But when you actually listen to the songs, if you like talk about the genres that you can identify as listening to it. But then when you actually listen to the songs, you're like, none of these songs really fit into those genres, which is actually something that is becoming more and more frequent. And it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, right? Genre is disappearing in a way. Like, obviously there are stalwarts who are going to continue to play a genre, and like that's what they stick to because it's the tried and true formula. But obviously, as music has just become everywhere, inescapable, and people are subjected to like just random tracks, especially like on platforms like TikTok, where as you're scrolling through, you might get just like blasted with 5 different genres that cause 5 different clips. The idea that there's like a massive distinction, or that you like they have to be kind of kept separate, just I think has disappeared. So we get more interesting, it's like fusion, right? When in cuisine, when they just like slap different cuisines together, like it's fusion now. But anyway, let's give this a shot. Title track. Very much like a new metal-y sound. I mean, not like exactly, but I don't know, there's something about it that just reminds me of that specific era, but we shift gears pretty quickly. Can't do too much. So again, for anybody who's familiar with metal, like you can probably identify that. You can identify the component sounds, but how they've been assembled is, I don't know, maybe not the best analogy, was the one that just came to mind. You ever seen those Lego constructor sets where it's like a 3-in-1, and you can use all the pieces to construct like a toucan and a race car, and it's kind of like somebody had one of those 3-in-1, and instead of building just one specific model, they just kind of decided to build everything all at once. So Had a little bit more of that hardcore, especially like the punk energy there with the. So it's a motley release. The songs are all just kind of haberdashery. I think that's the right term for it, right? But it kind of works. I don't know. It's one of those releases where there are moments in it where I'm just like, that doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite click with me. But then there are parts of it where I really enjoy, and I think like that also makes for an interesting listen. These guys were just making music that they enjoyed instead of trying to adhere to a specific sound that people might. It's like they were doing it for themselves, and if you happen to like what they did, that's great, but they were just having fun and playing around and experimenting, and I always appreciate that. So that's the EP УРАН 235, Uranium 235, and hanygaflex is the name of the group. All right, now kind of the last metal release until the end, so just keep that in mind. This is the album. This is from out of St. Petersburg. This is the mini album, "The Ugly Facets of the Modern World" by Internal Damage. It's grindcore, and I know I should. We've got 10 tracks. It's grindcore. You expect the tracks to be short. I should give it a little leeway. I'm calling it a mini album because on Spotify, if you actually look, it's like 26 minutes long. Basically, if they just written 2 more tracks or played one out a little bit longer, it would have pushed over the 30-minute mark. So I'm calling it a mini. We're just going with that. Yeah. And I would have liked to have a few more tracks here. We don't get a lot of releases like this. Grindcore sounds like a scary genre. It kind of is. It's not for everybody. But it's that old school sound, a la Napalm Death, little Carcass in there. But there are moments, I know this is just like me speaking Latin to probably most of you, but there are moments where, for those of you familiar with Agoraphobic Nosebleed or Pig Destroyer, you might get that. But you can guess too from the song titles. There Will Be No Endless Growth, Slaughter is the Best Medicine, Double Standards, Ally of Atrocities. These guys have a lot of, societal critiques that they're getting out there. And it's kind of nice. They got that mixed with the speed and intensity and this also technicality at the same time. But it's kind of, let's get into it. It's kind of like Napalm Death in a lot of ways. And hey, Napalm Death, classic in the metal genre at this point in time, so. Gonna get a little faster one here. Got the slower ones, you got the faster ones. It's grindcore, that's how it works. Type of drumming where you pity the drummer. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. I'm sure there was probably like one album like this last year, but this is a really well done grindcore album. There are a few tracks on it that weren't super top level, but on the whole, really well done. The group has a number of other releases, so they're not new by any means. So I don't know. I was pleasantly. It's a weird thing to say about a grindcore album. I know. I was pleasantly surprised by this, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like I'm used to. Even got a little bit of the kind of groove on the closer track here. There's a few other tracks that have a little bit of those groovy riffs as well, but. There we go. There we go. There's Guy. Glad to see you here. Yeah, I thought maybe you would tune in after I heard you're a musician, so. You know none of them. Okay, well, anyway. Well, Napalm Death has been around for a very, very long time, too. I think Napalm Death has been around for about 40 years, but I guess they're UK, so. Anyway, yeah. Pleasantly surprised by the grindcore thing here. You do see grind music and that type of stuff pop up from time to time, but I'm going to be completely honest. Most of it is atrociously either played or produced, one of the two. It's kind of like black metal where there's just it's a slog. So I turned this on. I honestly had to double check and make sure. Well, Guy, yeah, you've heard quite a bit. I honestly had to double check too to make sure that these guys were Russian. I mean, there's a lot of Russian groups that do the English lyrics and all of that stuff, but yeah, anyway. Plus, I mean, I guess I shouldn't have been. There are two tracks that have the Russian titles, but anyway, that is the album, The Ugly Facets, the mini album, The Ugly Facets of the Modern World. Group is Internal Damage. We're gonna dial it back a little bit. We're gonna go to something a little bit like almost 180 degrees. This is the album Green, and the artist is Fosho. I also got to get my notes open here so I can find which tracks I want to highlight. I'm pretty sure like the first one, so I shouldn't be in. Yeah. This is kind of like dusty analog vinyl sounding, jazzy lo-fi beats. Obviously, if it's lo-fi, it's got to be kind of dusty and analog sounding, but regardless. This is one of those albums that there actually are quite a few releases. I'll put the music on too. Quite a few releases that, every month float into my playlists. And a lot of times I just don't, there's so much music in this genre, so many people making this type of music. It's the type of music that unfortunately AI is starting to just produce because it's relatively simple, it's relatively straightforward. But I kept coming back to this. We've been having a really rainy summer here, especially in July. The first week, I shouldn't say July. Like, the first 2 days of July were really warm, like mid to upper 80s. And then, at least here in Moscow. And then it's just been raining. Maybe not nonstop, but we've just had a lot of rainy days. Days where you wake up in the morning, it's overcast. It looks like autumn. It's warm outside, which is great, don't get me wrong, but not necessarily warm enough for shorts on some days. And then it'll just be downpouring half the time anyway. And that, I don't know, just kind of like this music fit that it's still really chill, but the jazzy horns, the really, I don't know. It's music that in a lot of situations is pretty generic, pretty forgettable. But I found when I was listening to this that some of these tracks, especially because those horn lines, they kind of work their way, into your head. It's, again, really simple melodies, ones that you're not necessarily going to remember, but while you're listening to them, it keeps things moving forward. There's a sense of direction with it. So it also is just one of those things too where it actually does feel like there's, at least in my opinion, with a lot of this stuff, kind of feel that there's a bit of design put into it. So very simple. No, guy, I'm never gonna. I'll be honest. I'm probably never gonna find another subscriber outside of family members, perhaps, who have been to like Denison. Atlantic's fairly common. It's like not too far off of 80, but. So. Yeah, like, we got a trumpet with the, what's the name of the mute? I should know this, I played trumpet. It's not the plunger. It's not the straight mute. It's not the cup mute. Wait, what the hell is it called? The Harmon mute? Maybe it's the Harmon mute. I gotta double check. It's the Harmon mute, yeah. I thought we had another name for it, but... I don't know. If you're looking for something... again, this is just like, I also placed this in the lineup this week because I felt like after the last few releases it might be a bit of a breath of fresh air. But I also think that, like, you know, it's just nice sometimes to have these types of albums in it's the Harmon mute. It's just nice to have these types of albums sometimes, like, in a playlist or bookmarked somewhere for probably not the summertime. I've been looking at the weather back in Iowa, and it's like god-awful hot and humid, but rainy days in the autumn, you know, early springtime, it's got a good energy. So anyway, that is the album Green. The artist is Fosho. He's got quite a few other releases. These guys, types of lo-fi beat makers, tend to be pretty prolific because they just like sit around, tool around, and they can churn out tracks, you know, relatively quickly. But it was nice. Listen, I had a good time with it. All right, we're on to the final four already. Feels suspiciously quick. Next one here is the group Magnolia, and the album, the mini album here is "Ты больше никогда не увидишь нас," or "You will never see us again." And this is where we're going to talk about shoegaze. It feels like we can't go a week here without talking about shoegaze, and kind of what's more, the sub-genre of grunge gaze feels like it's half of the shoegaze releases, right? Especially in the last few months. But this time around, even though the group uses those terms, grunge gaze, shoegaze, there's something a little bit different to this. And this is one of those... motorcycles outside. This is one of those albums that I listened to when it came out. I don't remember exactly when it came out. I should probably get it open here on Spotify so that I can actually keep track. It came out on June 19th, so it's been a few weeks. And I did listen to it the first week it came out, and then I kind of like sat on it. But there's something here, and it's a little bit different. There is a more prominent use of synths and electronics. We'll highlight some of that, especially the electronic end of things. There are these kind of interlude tracks throughout this album. But it's shoegaze or grunge gaze, or however you want to like split those hairs there. But it's paired together with alt metal or alt rock. Again, split that hair however you want. And the releases, we got like these really caustic elements, especially in the guitar end. But then it balances out, or maybe sometimes it's in the guitar end of things, but also sometimes just like the rhythm section. But because of that general shoegaze and that the sort of fuzziness and just that a blanket of sound type thing, it kind of keeps it from cutting too deeply, if you will, Let me go ahead and throw... Oh, wait, I'm using the wrong mouse here. So there is general, that distortion, that fuzz, but I guess maybe it is the drums and the rhythm section. They're doing a little bit more of the alt end of things. So that's kind of the general sound, but regularly, right, like the opening track, you can kind of tell by the length, the ones that tend to be a little bit shorter, they'll have these odd electronic tracks thrown in there. And I know making the jump that I just did might feel kind of odd, but as you're listening to the album, these don't actually feel out of place. They feel placed as again, kind of interludes in a weird way. But you know, I was talking about that whole idea of with music in a place right now where people, especially younger people who are on TikTok and just scrolling and consuming as much as they can, it's at a point where, again, you might be listening to Deftones and then run into some footwork music or Crystal Castles or whatever it happens to be, and it doesn't feel like a juxtaposition. It just feels like, okay, that's just the next track. And it's I don't know, I guess that's my understanding of this, is just kind of, it doesn't really feel out of place because the genre walls are disappearing, I think is what it comes down to. And there's just enough of like the transitioning across the board. Yeah, I'm not sure about the audio levels are weird. I've got like it up as high as I can go right now. I mean, I'm trying to drop myself a little bit. I don't know if that'll help. But there are the slower, more dialed back tracks as well. They don't last very long, just keep that in mind. But there's, again, that just general wall of noise that the reverb, the feedback, not feedback really as much, just reverb, but. And on tracks like this, you can hear that shoegaze, grunge gaze a little bit more, right? But it never escapes the alt metal sound at the same time. I mean, to be fair, I feel like if you've been watching these streams for a while, then you're probably well versed in the gaze style music. But I feel like the group here, Magnolia, are bringing something a little bit different, and it does feel like they were catching, at least in the rock music or the heavier music community here, a little bit of attention. So. It's worth highlighting, and that just seems to be one of the more popular genres here at the time, at least in the in the rock end of things, I guess. But that is the album, the mini album, больше, никогда не увидишь нас, by Magnolia. With this, I guess whatever album artwork, it's fine, it works. All right, getting into the final three. Final three, we started to get a little bit interesting. First one up here, we have the album Vkus, Taste of Poison. And the artist here is Kostya Kairo. A lot of you probably don't know the group of Montreal, but their song, Gallery Piece, off of the album Skeletal Lamping from, I think, 2008, was my first introduction to that group. And it's just this weird psychedelic disco pop, and it's one of those tracks that when you first hear it, it is very kind of compelling and repelling at the same time. But it was also one of those tracks that I kept coming back to, kept listening to it again and again. And while I can't say I fully understand the sound of Gallery Piece or of Montreal or the sound of Montreal in general, it kind of makes sense in its own special way. This album, I saw a lot of people describing it as like gypsy pop or I don't know, like just all sorts of weird stuff. This just feels, and I might be way off base here, but it feels like Kostya has listened to a fair amount of Montreal. Maybe not, maybe there's something else, but regardless, if you're familiar with Of Montreal, then this album is going to make a lot of sense. If you're not, you should check out Of Montreal. They're kind of a trip. It's got a lot of the same energy, though, Vkus. It's just that if Of Montreal, it was this psychedelic disco pop, but the pop music was that sort of dancey, remixable pop music of the late 2000s, early 2010s. Here in 2026, the pop music, this is still very much like psych, even a little bit disco, not really as disco so much, but like sort of psychedelic pop. But the pop here is more of the bedroom pop. Anyway, let me just, wait, what? Why does Spotify not have any of, oh no, none of them got saved. How did that happen? Okay. Well, I know the first track is where we're gonna start regardless. Oh, there they are. I found all my liked songs. But you can hear the psychedelic elements here, right? But also that kind of just that really like off-kilter indie pop. Kind of compelling, kind of repelling at the same time, right? Let's move along. I want to get like a fair sample here. This is the track where I was just like, of Montreal. Tracks tend to go in all sorts of directions too, which does make for... I know there were a number of times when listening to this album where I had the music playing in the background, I was doing something, I had to check, it was like, okay, what's the name of this track? And then it was just, oh, it's the same one, he's just doing something else now. This is, in a while, I mean, I'm gonna have to double check for sure, but we haven't had anything like super experimental in terms of like the psychedelic end of pop music in a while. I mean, there may be one or two other releases this year, but this is just like a really kind of off-the-wall experience. It's not too far out there, right? It's not like gonna push you away, but it also it like when you're listening to it the first time, you really will get thrown for a loop from time to time when certain elements come in, or tempo shifts, or just like tonal shifts in the actual tracks. But it's a really good, like that right there, right? It's a really good album, and it's, I don't know, I guess I'll put it like this. The album artwork feels wildly appropriate for some reason. This very over it sort of facial expression, but then all of these very bright and colorful and twisting forms and shapes across the artist's face. Simple but effective, and the music is also very entertaining. So that is the album Vkus, and the artist there is Kostya Kairo. But okay, Then there were two. We got a little mini album here as well. This is the group Astrosail. The album, or the mini one, is Pуть, which is the path, the way. And I mentioned earlier, stoner, doom, sludge. This is the good stuff. If you're looking for the heavier, fuzzier bass end of stuff, this is what you're looking for. This is music that fits the album artwork. We got sludgy stoner riffs, just like massive colossal ones, like you're wandering lost in the mountains of Mordor. But then you've got all these, like, you know, you're so far up in the mountains, you got the wispy trails of cloud and smoke, and they're mingling together in the atmosphere. And that's these very light elements of guitar and synth. Just a really good album. Let me just go ahead and start us off here with the title track. There are a lot of moments on this mini that feel like post-metal, right? And I don't want to say that there aren't vocals, because there are plenty of vocals on it too, but it's one of those where, also good news for people who don't like sort of rough vocals, here the vocals never get more aggressive than like a kind of like barking type thing, but for the most part the vocals are clean. Just like a really heavy album, but also really accessible at the same time. It reminded me a little bit of Baroness. Moments like this feel like a heavier version of Mastodon's Crack the Sky. I mean, I feel like I was pretty spot on with the reference to stoner rock, stoner metal. If one of the albums in this genre is called Bong Tower, or I guess, no, the album is Color of Pomegranates, the group is Bong Tower, so. Right, like the vocals, they're in there enough, right? It's not like they're super, super rare, but it's the type of music where the riffs are what you're there for. And I think the album itself is I gotta double check. Yeah. About 26, a little over 26 minutes long, and it's just thick riffs the whole time, so. Jump ahead a little bit here. I guess the vocals too are those elements that kind of act as a counter to the heaviness of everything else going on in the guitar and bass department. All right, just a little bit more, and then we'll. does such a good job of building atmosphere. I always love that. I always love that. And I really do like that. Here I can use juxtaposition with these very harmonic and light and sort of up their vocals, and then just everything that's going on. It's really sludgy there. And again, like, that guitar is not super forefront, right? Like, the sludgy stuff is still front and center. It's just kind of floating back there somewhere in the mix. So really good, really heavy, really sludgy. Yeah, again, kind of like the grindcore, the Internal Damage album. It's not really like I love heavy sludgy music like this too, and I know that there are a lot of bands out there making good music, but it's not something I go out, searching for. It's not like my specific rock or metal genre. But anyway, having something like this, again, kind of like the grindcore thing too, just pop up, and it being of such high quality, it was very pleasant of a surprise. But yeah, that is the mini album Pуть from the group Astrosail. And the last album here is only on Bandcamp, as far as I can tell. I never checked Yandex. I guess I could. Let me just do it down here. I don't think it is. I think I actually did check on Yandex, but I'll check real fast. Bezumию. Yeah, it's not even on Yandex. It's only on Bandcamp. So keep that in mind. It's worth it, I guess is what I'm going to say. This is the group Mrak, I think is how we're supposed to say that. Mrak. I don't actually know I'm sure there's an explanation for the band's name. I didn't go digging it down. I do have some information about the band. We'll talk about that in just a second. But the album is Безумию, храбрых, поем, песни. We'll talk about the title of the album here in a bit too. But I remember hearing the term crust with regards to musical genres back in high school, and I thought it was hilariously stupid. And I do kind of think it's a hilariously... Wait, what are we doing here? Oh, no. I forgot Bandcamp doesn't work with this. Son of a... All right, well, hold up. Let me get contacts open. But as I was saying, yeah, crust. Goofy name. Still think it's ridiculous. But I have come to enjoy the genre when it is done well. And this is an example of that. This is this is Blackened Crust, to be specific, out of Nizhny Novgorod. Wait, hold on, let me just check something. No, yeah, okay, it doesn't. I'll get this open in just a second. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Can I close? All right, let me try to minimize as much of the VK garbage as possible. All right, we'll go back. So I'll leave this up for now. We'll click over in the music in a second. This is Blackened Crust, so it's crust with black metal elements. But again, it's a really simplification, but it's a fair simplification. Anyway, June 5th, you can see. This is one of those albums that I have been sitting on for a while. What makes this good, though, first of all, just like, it's intense. It's really intense. But like, every single track on this album is just fire. There's not a bad track. There are some that are just exceptionally better, in my own personal opinion, but I've seen lots of discussion on metal communities about this here. And some of the tracks that I don't like as much, other people thought were some of the best. So anyway, this isn't just like straight in your face blackened crust from start to finish. And I know I've been saying crust a lot. Most of you don't understand what I'm talking about, but you'll hear it in a second. So just give me it. But there are these like interludes, these intros to the songs, or brief moments where you have a moment to catch your breath. Let me just get us started here. All right, brace yourselves. And those moments, those interludes that kind of feel a little bit more calm, a little bit more post-metal, they're perfect. Again, juxtaposition. But here, it's just like a brief window of time, like being trapped in a stormy ocean, and you come up above the water just long enough to catch a breath of air before the next wave comes crashing back down on top of you. That's how this album operates. And this is a phenomenal album. Just like when the speed comes in too. All right, I'm going to stop it there for a second. I do want to talk a little bit. I'll go back to the music in a second. It's just like, it's a really good album. It's solid all the way from start to finish. And I wish I could enlarge the image here, but I can't. It will not allow me to do it. So you'll have to follow link and do it. But we have a woman. We have 4 bombs falling out of the sky. We have 4 birds. We have the woman with the thresher, right, with the scythe threshing in the fields. A lot of symbolism there, if you will. The title of the album, Безумию, храбрых, поем, песни, is which translates to "We sing a song to the madness of daring." It comes from a story from Maxim Gorky, who was the revolutionary poet. The story is the Song of the Falcon, and that song is all about not being beholden to the Tsar or the powers that be, whoever the sort of oppressor tends to be. Basically, the man in charge, if you will. The group, well, obviously anything connected to Gorky and his writings can be connected to leftist revolutionary ideologies. But if you read interviews, if you let the members of the group talk, that becomes a little bit more clear. This was from an interview with the group members. This is what one of them had to say. All group members in one way or another hold leftist anti-fascist views. We place the class struggle front and center. From here is our critical position with regards to imperialism and those wars which it wages. So I've been saying, I have been waiting for really pissed off specific metal, and it's been starting to pop up, but since the war started here, the metal community, by and large, is not pro-war, right? With a few holdouts and exceptions, most metalheads are not into that. And so I've just been the first few years of the war here is where the fuck, where's it at? We're starting to get it. And this is one of those, granted, these guys are we've got the sort of leftist anti-fascist, but it's a period of time in Russian culture right now where that is very kind of spot on in various ways. But yeah, let me just get back to it. I'm gonna hit a few more tracks, but this is what I was talking about, right? It's not just that intensity from start to finish, right? As you're listening to this album, this is the sixth track. So there's been a lot of heaviness, and then you come to the start of this track, and it again, it gives you a moment to catch your breath. No. Like the melodies that they've got buried under everything too. So many great elements on this album. So obviously, like, the whole album is the struggle of the man, like the individual, against the system. Not like in the Rage Against the Machine way, but again in that sort of like class struggle against the, I guess, kind of like Rage Against the Machine, but obviously a little bit more different. So again, it's a simple thing, but it's not what you would typically get on a crust album, or a blackened crust album for that matter, right? It's these moments of levity. All right, I gotta. Last album's always the one that I have the hardest time like breaking from, but I'll highlight this. I do want to highlight the outro too, because I think the outro is so short and to the point too, but like the way they it's just got like such a powerful atmosphere at the end of everything too. So obviously, like, the blackened, or the black metal end of blackened crust right here. Also, on the one nice thing about Bandcamp is the lyrics are there, and if you can understand Russian, you'll see quite poetic, I guess is what I would say, which, you know. I knew there was a bit of a bridge somewhere that I was. I know. It's heavy. It's fast. There are, you know, the intro, the outro here, and then the other brief windows across the 37-minute runtime when it's not so blistering and in your face. But if you're down with that type of music, then this is yeah, this is definitely an album worth checking out. And I think it is here too, like after the speed and just the unrelenting assault of everything across, well, the intro's not too intense either, but like tracks 2 through 8, when you get to the ender here and it ends like this, just so slow, and I don't know, it's such a nice way to bookend with this and the intro. So this is the first full length from this group. They have put out one or maybe 2 EPs, but they've been putting out stuff for, I think, since 2024. So I remember listening to their EP last year, and it was interesting, and it was, I didn't actually talk about it on the stream at all, but it was one of those things where it was like, okay, yeah, it's got some teeth, it's got some legs, but it was, like 4 tracks or whatever, and I didn't come back around to it. This is such a powerful statement of intent here, and I am very much looking forward to whatever these guys end up doing in the future, and I don't know, hopefully they'll come through on a tour or something in the near future. I don't know, Nizhny Novgorod is not that far away, but yeah. We've got the really pissed off, politically motivated type of music finally, and it's very pissed off, but rightfully so, I suppose. That is the album Безумию, храбрых, поем, песни by the group Mrak. And again, the translated title of that is We Sing a Song to the Madness of Daring. Yep. So that's it. We had 11 this week. One extra one snuck in there somehow. But I think this week and last week we had kind of some heavier weeks than we've normally had, and quite a bit of some heavy music recently. But I do think that just looking at the albums I got lined up for next week kind of already, it will be a little more dialed back. So if you've been tuning in and suffering through that, if metal's not your thing, then just know that next week should be a little bit easier, but you'll have to wait until then. Anyway, at the very least, there were some other ones. Kostya Kairo, I think, with the sort of psychedelic pop is a really good one. And if you just want something really chill, and you got the fosho with green, and yeah, there's actually like I think there was a pretty diverse lineup this week, all things considered. So anyway, everyone who tuned in, everyone who had to listen to some tunes, thanks for doing so. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'll be back next Thursday with more music, and then I'll be back on Sunday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. Moscow time for the news. But until then, whatever you happen to tune into, everyone have a good afternoon, good evening. Y'all take care of yourselves. I will see you when I see you, and until then,